Oh no!
Awesome.
Mind my business!
Fail.
Mind my business.
Oh yeah.
Mind my business. Hey, and welcome back, everybody. Really sad news. Today marks the beginning of the end of podcasting. Just kidding. And welcome to a new episode of Mind My Business. It's our opinion podcast from Hype 1000. I'm your host and the co-founder of Hype 1000. And my name is Max. And I hope you forgive my acting skills at the beginning. But I found this really interesting article on rainnews.com, and it's a really interesting site. They have this section about podcasting, and you get a lot of infos and insights on the English-speaking podcasting market and the international podcasting market in general. And I saw this really interesting article from a few days ago, I think, and it was statistics being published by Listen Notes, another really cool website where you can pretty much it's a search engine for podcasts where you can find a lot of interesting stuff about podcasts. They do some curation as well. They have this ranking as well, so definitely check it out, listennotes.com as well. And so they published this statistic on the number of shows being released, on the one hand on a scale looking back at the years 2009 till today, and then specifically for the year 2021. And what we see is that, of course, during the Corona years, 2020 especially, and 2021, we saw a drastic rise in new shows, new podcasts being launched. And also, we see now that that trend is over, and it died down. The new shows being released on different platforms, and of course, this doesn't mark the end of podcasting. I think it's a very natural move that we had this spike due to the fact that during Corona or during COVID, companies and people and creators were looking for an alternative outlet, an alternative medium to go to, and connect with their communities, connect with their audiences, and podcasting it was a really easy way to start and set it up. And that's why a lot of people started. So if we look at the year 2020 alone, it was more than 1 million new shows. There were 1 million new shows launched just in 2020. And in 2021, it was still another 700,000 new shows launched globally. And that is just the ones that we can find on Listen Notes. So that are the ones that have their own RSS feed. So there might be even a bit more, maybe like 10-15% more of podcasts that are not hosted on the generic podcasting platforms that you don't find, stuff that is just solely on YouTube. You might not have it included here. And it was quite crazy to see that rise. And if we look at 2021, the numbers that they publish, and I have them right here, you see that the beginning of 2021, there were nearly or more than 100,000 new shows launched. And then over the next few months until April, there were at least 80,000 new shows launched. And then it kind of drizzled down. And if we just look at 2022, which is only 4 months old, there's only, and I'm just saying only, 200,000 new podcasts being launched globally. Of course, it's still a high number, but in comparison, that was just January and February of 2021 alone. So it kind of dies down, and of course that's something we will continue to see, and it's definitely not the end of podcasting. Of course, I was joking at the beginning, but we see a correction in the market. We had this like spike, and we had this real surge in podcasting, where everybody, like I said, was going to podcasting as a means to communicate. And of course, that is now being corrected. People going back to their regular routines, maybe going back to doing live shows, or whoever is doing that. And that brings me to another statistic as well, that we see, that I find really interesting, that nearly 50% of all podcasts that are being launched, they only 50% make it beyond episode 1 or 2. So if we take the over 1 million podcasts being launched, or shows being launched in 2020, only 500,000 make it to the stage where they do more than 2 episodes. And then there's a few podcasts that were launched, of course, that are just serial formats, that you have a season or 2 that will then die off because it's finished, and so nothing else will be released on that. So we can deduct that from it as well. So yeah, it's just a correction of the market from those COVID years, and now we're going back to that most likely very steady, continual growth alongside the development of the market, because we have seen that from the years 2014 to 2019, we have that continuous growth that is just slightly growing twofold, threefold each year, and we will go back to that growth in the year 2022. So we'll be just going organically in the same way as the number of listeners grows. So podcasting is still a very attractive medium. It's still a growing market, and of course, with a growing market and new audiences coming in, there will be new shows coming in as well. Some old podcasts will be stopped, and so we have that correction in the market. It will definitely not be the end. But what we see is something really interesting, and that brings me to the last point. We continue to see a shift in just individual creators and amateur creators, which we've seen in the past a lot more. That idea of everybody can start a podcast, and everybody's saying, so you work in this hipster cafe and you still don't have a podcast, so you're not really hipster anymore. That kind of saying. We see now that we have a bigger shift and a stronger growth in that corporate environment. More organizations, more corporates doing podcasts, seeing that as a new medium to tap into. So we definitely see a shift where we now maybe have 15 to 20% of content being created by corporates. Over the next 5 years, we will see a rise, and that's what we see from our own research, from 20% to 30%, maybe 35%. We see that rise in creation of corporate content, and that is quite interesting. So there's still a lot of potential in that, and of course, with those corporates coming in, there's more money coming in the market, and this will professionalize the market. If the market has more money to spend on education, on equipment, and all those things that help a market mature and establish itself. It's very similar to what we've seen with the social media market 6, 7, 8 years ago. We can see that now in the podcast market. So definitely not the end of it. It's still going to be interesting to see, and it's going to be interesting to see what podcasts have started in 2020 and are still in existence now, and the number of podcasts that were started that never made it past episode 2. So yeah, that's my thoughts on this topic of the end of podcasts. As I said in the beginning, thanks for tuning in, thanks for listening, and I hear tomorrow.
Why don't you mind your business?